Okay, yep, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Ocean Shores Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is June 29th, 2023 at 10 a.m. We have 3 items on the agenda today. First on the agenda is number RUE 23008, which is a request for a reasonable use exception, or RUE for short, to allow for the development of a single family residence that would result in 4,170 square feet of impacts to a buffer associated with a Category 1 interdunal wetland on an approximately 0.18 acre lot located at 1278 East Ocean Shores Boulevard Southwest. My name is Peregrine Sorter. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, whom the city has selected to hold certain land use hearings like this one. And it will be my role today to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether the proposal complies with the city comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific criteria for approval of a reasonable use exception. To that end, I received and reviewed several exhibits in advance of this hearing. These include the application and project plans, a wetland rating summary prepared by Key Environmental Solutions, the staff report prepared by city staff, and various notice materials. And I will go ahead and admit these exhibits into the record. Should anyone have any additional exhibits they would like admitted into the record, please let me know when it is your opportunity to testify, and I will go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. Speaking of testimony, all testimony today will be under oath or affirmation because were my decision to be appealed, the recording of today's hearing, along with the admitted exhibits and my written decision, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. I may ask questions of those who are testifying. I assure you I'm not trying to trip anyone up. I'm just trying to ensure that I have a clear understanding of the proposal so that after the record closes, I am able to produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. The order that we typically follow, and I believe we will be following today, is first we will hear from city staff, who will provide an overview of the proposal along with any recommendations that the city may have. Following that, we will hear from the applicant and see if there is any additional information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of my decision being issued. After that, members of the public will have an opportunity to testify. And finally, following any public testimony, we'll turn back to the applicant and the city as necessary for any response. And I think with that, we can get started. Mr. Reed, let's get you sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony that you give today?
I do.
Thank you. And did my summary of the exhibits track with what you were hoping I'd review in advance of the hearing?
Yes, they did.
Thank you. And can you please state and spell your name for the audio recording and explain your role at the city?
Sure. My name is Marshall Reed, spelled M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L. Last name is Reed, R-E-A-D, and I serve as the lead planner for the City of Ocean Shores in environmental permitting and land use.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. You may proceed with your presentation. I'm having a little bit of trouble picking up your audio. I don't know if you can maybe speak closer to your microphone or something. It's a little choppy, just to let you know.
One of the things I noticed is if I'm not looking directly at the owl doesn't hear me. So
that sounds much better.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to start out with the staff report that was prepared for James and Janice Hooker in relation to their proposal to develop a single-family residence that was on a lot encumbered by a Category 1 interdunal wetland. The buffer width on this wetland is 225 feet, so the entire lot was encumbered by this buffer. The surrounding conditions, first of all, the site address of this proposal is 1278 East Ocean Shores Boulevard on a 7,922 square foot lot. The total proposed impacts to this buffer is 4,170. The zoning of the parcel is R1, land use is single family, is not in the shoreline jurisdiction. And the surrounding conditions are R1 single family to the north, south, and West of this property to the east is public recreational, and it's identified on the county's map as the Oyhut Game Preserve. The land use designation surrounding this parcel, single family all the way around, except for to the east, we have the nature preserve owned by Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. The existing land uses around this, we have to the north is a vacant lot, to the south is a single family residence. Again, the Oyhut State Wildlife Reserve to the east, and to the west is a single family residence. The subject property, addressed at 1278 East Ocean Shores Boulevard, is located in the southwest corner of Ocean Shores, and with the closest intersecting street roughly 360 feet to the south at Spinnaker. The property is zoned R1 and located in a single-family zone. The zoning in the immediate vicinity is exclusively R1, and impacting the lot for a single-family dwelling is a permitted use in this district. The public hearing notices for this hearing was for a reasonable use exception application RUE 23-008, scheduled for today, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. They were sent to owners within 300 feet of the subject property on June 15th, as required by Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1752-090. Hearing information was also sent out to the City of Ocean Shores website, and public notice was made through the Daily World in the June 20th and June 22nd publications. The staff has determined that this proposed development project is listed as a permitted use as defined in Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1716-020A, and that a wetland buffer exists on the parcel and the surrounding parcels, which require an approved reasonable use exception to impact any of this buffer. The project was determined to be exempt from SEPA under WAC 197-11-801C under minor new construction. Table D, single family residential up to 20 units in incorporated and unincorporated areas. So this project is exempt from SEPA. The purpose of the RUE is to allow use of the parcel that would be allowed and is in all respects otherwise in accordance with the requirements of all applicable development regulations of the city, provided that all reasonable measures to avoid and minimize impacts to any wetland areas or its associated buffers are applied, and the applicant demonstrates that the project has been approved under all federal and state regulatory programs applicable to the project. Any impacts to the wetland buffers must be compensated through mitigation measures where on-site or off-site mitigation is infeasible. Compensatory mitigation may be authorized by Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1902-150B. The standard of review, the process to obtain a reasonable use exception permit, shall be the same process and criteria applicable to a conditional use permit. Under 1752-050, the criteria for a consideration of a conditional use before any permit is granted, the hearing examiner must determine the following: that the use applied for is either in the listed conditional uses allowed in the district, or that is significantly similar to one or more of the listed uses. B, approval of the permit will be substantially consistent with the purpose of the district and applicable provisions of comprehensive plan, and will not adversely affect other uses and properties in the immediate vicinity. Also, under C, the granting of the permit does not reduce the dimensional requirements of the district, and D, that there will be no nuisance to life, limb, or property as this is a development. The code analysis, the project may be allowed in an R1 zone. It's a directly permitted use, a single family residence. The district under the comprehensive plan is intended for low density detached single family dwellings. So this project would be compliant or consistent with the outlined uses of the comprehensive plan. And where the proposed use appears to be consistent with the purpose of the district, A, the proposed site plan shall conform to all city standards, and approving the application would not reduce the dimensional requirements of the district. B, there's no indication that allowing a single family residence in this zone would create any nuisance to life, limb, or property. There have been no changes to the comprehensive plan or critical areas regulations since the receipt of the application that would affect this project. The summary of criteria for wetland buffer impact. Peregrine, would you like me to run through that entire summary for this project, or Do you want
Oh,
to just,
I think you can just hit the high points. Just summarize would be great, Mr. Reed.
So basically, in order to impact.
Can you look at the owl? We're having trouble picking you up.
so the hearing examiner is going to have to review this project and determine that there is no practical alternative for the design or development that would allow development without impacting the buffer. The prohibition would preclude the use of the property that would otherwise be legal under all applicable city development, meaning this lot is like a lot that is not encumbered by a wetland, and that the wetland is the issue. So the hearing examiner is determining that the project, if there were no wetland, would be permitted straight out without any conditions. It also has to incorporate measures to provide for compliance with Section D of the Title 1902-090. The Hooker project is located in the R1 zone where single-family residence is designated as a permitted use, and it would be legal under all applicable city development regulations, and it would be feasible based on the conditions of the parcel. The only problem with the parcel is it's got an encumbrance from the wetland buffer. A typical single-family residential site design in Ocean Shores would utilize the majority of the parcel for structure, parking, custom landscaping, this in addition to the required construction of the home. As this typical design would encroach into the delineated buffer of the Hooker parcel, the project was designed to minimize these impacts. That's one of the criteria in working around wetlands. There's a step criteria. Number one, you have to avoid impacts to a wetland or a wetland buffer if possible. And then beyond that, you have to minimize the impacts to a wetland or wetland buffer. And once you've done both of those things, if there are still wetland or wetland buffers that need to be impacted, you have to mitigate those impacts. The applicant in this case has set aside natural areas of the parcel that will be used in minimization. Section D requires that only the minimum necessary to achieve the purpose shall be allowed. They've done that. The project proposes to use the city's wetland mitigation bank to compensate for all of the impacts that would be necessary and authorized to make reasonable use of this property. And the third criteria to allow impacts to either a wetland or wetland buffer is this mitigation of impacts. In addition to the mitigation measures that are conditioned on this proposal, there's also a long-term protective measure consisting of a delineation fence. And what that is to notify this landowner and future landowners that there is a critical area beyond the fence. There will be a sign required. The city is in the process of revising what those fences are required to look like. Basically, we want it to be something that will delineate and make clear to those approaching the fence that there's a critical area on the other side that's not to be disturbed. The city may opt to modify those as long-term protection if either site conditions or level of compliance dictates. The city at this point is going to start out with minimal and more flexible fence designs for these mitigation fences. If it's determined that we have trouble with compliance, then I will make these fence requirements more strict, hoping we don't have to go down that road. My recommendation, should the hearing examiner approve this development, the planning department recommends conditions as listed in addition to any conditions imposed by the hearing examiner. The construction of the project must meet all current planning, zoning, building construction, and fire code requirements. And then the owner will have to work with the city and craft and execute a wetland buffer mitigation plan that will include compensation for impacts to the wetland buffer. The plan shall include the delineation fencing and signage that will protect the unmitigated critical area during and after construction activities are complete. And that pretty much concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, and thank you for your thorough report and presentation. I don't have a lot of questions. I find with these RUE hearings, it's sometimes helpful to have the applicant's expert available if they're here. So if you're not opposed, I see Ms. McMurray with Key Environmental Solutions is here. If I could swear you in while I'm asking Mr. Reed questions to have you available to provide any clarification, that would be great. So let's go ahead and get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you state and spell your name and please explain your role with this project?
Key McMurray, KEYMCMURRY, Key Environmental Solutions. I am the owner of Key Environmental Solutions, and I am the expert witness for Mr. Hooker. And I prepared the mitigation plan for Mr. Hooker for the site. And I am a professional wetland scientist.
Great. Thank you, Ms. McMurray. I'm going to go ahead and direct my questions now to Mr. Reed, but if you want to provide some clarifications, it's kind of an informal process, so I'll allow that. So, Mr. Reed, you explained in your presentation that the buffer associated with this wetland, it extends over the entirety of the property. So any development would be impossible without a RUE. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And then is the wetland, is that located entirely off the site and it's just the buffer that extends over the property?
Yes, that's the case. The interdunal wetlands are associated with the game preserve that's located east of the parcel.
And does that wetland, I'm looking at the aerial photos submitted by Ms. McMurray with her report. Does that wetland extend essentially to the rear of this property?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The city
Thanks.
has 20-foot wide right of way that extends, it's where the sewer utilities run on the back of all of these parcels adjacent to the East Ocean Shores Boulevard. And that entire area has kind of created a wetland tract in there. So most of these parcels on either side of this lot will be encumbered by the same type of wetland buffer situation where the wetland is off-site and the buffer extends on-site.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just trying to understand this. And then, so it appears, and I'm looking at what I have is PDF 18, which is a aerial photograph with an overlay that appears to show the building footprint, driveway. And it looks like, so the applicant would maintain a essentially 40-foot setback from the edge of the property, which is basically the edge of the wetland. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reed. And the fencing though would be located, now I'm looking at PDF 20. Some distance from the structure. But that entire kind of backyard area would be maintained as buffer. Is that correct?
Yes,
And
that is correct. So
okay.
The pink area shown on that PDF would be the delineation line, and the fence would be placed along that delineation.
Oh, okay. And then let's see here. And then it looks like the total disturbed area would be, would extend beyond this building footprint. Would any of that disturbed area potentially be restored after construction and reduce the obligation for the mitigation bank, or?
That area there's no plan to actively replant the area. Keith, can you refresh me on that? That fence was shown 40 feet from the back property line, and most of that area back there has already begun to revegetate itself through inactivity.
It's completely vegetated already, with natural vegetation. The only plans, that would be allowed, there is no planting planned for that area because it, like I said, it is already naturally vegetated. It is not, that area has not been cleared. The only activities that would be allowed in there would be removal of non-native, potentially Scotch broom in that area, but no plantings are planned in that area.
Great, thank you. And then, so all mitigation is going to be through the purchase of credits from the city's wetland mitigation bank.
That is correct.
And then I guess I have some questions on the structure itself. I have some site plans at my PDF 21 that show a garage, shop, entry area. Is this going to be a two-story structure? Is there going to be living space above this, what's shown on the plan here?
Are you aware, Key? I have a single footprint. Typically, when I'm doing a wetland project, I'm looking for the outline of the impervious surface. So I don't have a profile of the house.
That is my job too. I just look at the footprint. I don't look above the footprint and the impacts of that. So I am unaware if there is a second story to this. I don't believe so, but Mr. Hooker is online also, and that might be a better question for him, but I believe it is a single story.
Okay, and we'll turn to Mr. Hooker after I'm done
But
with
my job is just the square footage of the impacts, so I don't
Yeah.
look above that.
Yeah, the only reason why I ask is, that's a potential minimization measure, is the structure itself. If the footprint could be reduced by, going with a two-story, I guess. Mr. Reed, have you reviewed the plans for compliance with the maximum lot coverage requirement for the R1 zone? I believe it's 40%. I'm not entirely sure. Or is that something the city would review later?
Yeah, that's correct. In just looking at this, I knew it was less than 40%, so I haven't taken it through. We haven't received a formal building submittal. And so basically this proposal would be a maximum size, and I always consider it a possibility that an applicant could come in with a smaller structure. And so we don't review those until we have a building permit application.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm just trying to gain an understanding of the proposal. Mr. Reed, has the comprehensive plan or critical areas ordinance been amended since the application was deemed complete in a manner that would impact this proposal?
No, the comprehensive plan and the city code have remained the same.
Great, thank you, Mr. Reed. That's all the questions I have for you. So we can turn to the applicant and any witnesses they have. Mr. Hooker, would you like to provide testimony today?
Yes, sir.
Hey, let's get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And can you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is James Hooker, James Hooker.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hooker. And now's your opportunity to present any additional information about this proposal that you would like for me and the members of the public here today to know.
It will be a two-story house.
And you, let's see, have you had a chance to review the conditions that were recommended by city staff?
I certainly have, yes.
And would you have any issue complying with those conditions?
No issues.
Great. And is there any other comments on, I don't have a lot of questions for you. This seems fairly straightforward. But if you would like to provide any additional information, you may do so, or if you would like to turn to your expert if she has any additional information to provide.
Yeah, well, my only questions will be that back fence and design, as there are wild creatures, which I would like to keep out, and the split rail system that I saw doesn't prevent much security for dogs, cats, and kids.
Jim, the split rail fence is just an option. It,
Oh, okay.
like, Marshall was saying, that is, just an option, so
Okay,
it can be discussed of that was just one option.
very good. And other
Mr.
than that, I have no issues at all. I'm all
Great.
for preserving the wetland.
Thank you, Mr. Hooker. Ms. McMurray, do you have any additional comments on this proposal?
No, I don't. It's like you said, it's pretty straightforward.
Great, thank you. Mr. Reed, do we have anyone in the room today that would like to testify on this first matter?
Nobody wishing to testify.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to the attendees on Zoom. I see we have the Zimmermans here. I assume they're here for the next matter, but you're welcome to provide any comments if you'd like. Looks like they're good. Okay, I have an Alicia Jameson.
Yes, hi there.
Hi, would you like to provide
I'm
any
here
testimony
for-
on this matter? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm with the architectural team for the third CUP that we will be advising on.
Great, thank you, Ms. Jameson.
I
And
don't
then
have any feedback right now. Thank you.
great, thank you for being here. We have a JD Baker.
No, sir, I don't have anything to say.
Thank you for being here today. I don't see anyone else on Zoom, so I will turn back to Mr. Reed. Do you have any last thoughts on behalf of the city on this first matter?
Sure, yeah, I'll issue a little clarification on the fence. The fence requirements are an evolving requirement at this point. The 2-rail fence is a minimum requirement. I've approved up to a 6-foot fence of a chain link type for security or keeping creatures out or dogs and pets in. So so his concern about the fence is we're definitely flexible on that. And it will be compliant with the rest of the City of Ocean Shores code, so.
Great,
Very
Mr.
good,
Reed,
thank you.
really quickly, I have a question on the fencing. So the purpose of this requirement is to essentially protect the remaining buffer and provide notice of the, the delineated buffer area. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's just to provide notice and protection of the unmitigated portion of the parcel.
And then in past decisions, I've tried to tweak that condition a little bit to provide some flexibility, basically saying or a design approved by the city. Does that sound like a good approach with these fence requirements and the conditions?
After our last couple of hearings, gone through this process of RUE,
I'm having trouble picking you up. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble. I could hear you before. I don't know what's going on right now.
Okay, is it a connection between you and I?
I'm having trouble also, Marshall.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay. Yes, flexibility in the fencing is definitely a preferred choice at this point.
Great, thank you. Any last thoughts before I adjourn this first matter?
Yeah, Your Honor, the reason for the split rail fence as a minimum, because some people like to have the flexibility of allowing the movement of wildlife. So that's why it's low and wildlife can move across it. And others like Mr. Hooker want to keep them out. So that's why we try to allow the flexibility, and it's more of the line so people don't encroach further into the buffer. And because if we don't have that line, there's no visual line and they can keep encroaching in too. So
Great,
that is why we have the fence.
thank you. And it sounds like the applicant's willing to work with the city on that final design.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. Any last thoughts, Mr. Reed, before I adjourn this?
No, I'm hoping my microphone continues to work.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for participating. If you're here for the first matter, you may leave, but you're welcome to stay. And I intend to issue a decision on this request within 10 business days of the record closing. Thank you for being here. And Mr. Reed, we'll give you a few minutes before we start the next one. Just let me know when you're ready. Today is number VAR 23002, a request for a variance from the dimensional requirements of Ocean Shores Municipal Code 17-16060 to reduce the minimum required 20-foot front yard structural setback to a minimum of 12 feet, which would facilitate the expansion of an existing single-family residence that is legally non-conforming with this minimum front yard setback requirement on an approximately 0.58 acre lot located at 769 Wakena Loop Southeast. The exhibits I received and reviewed in advance of the hearing for this matter include the application and project plans, the staff report prepared by city staff, and various notice materials. And I will go ahead and admit these exhibits into the record. Should anyone have any additional exhibits they would like admitted into the record, please let me know when it is your opportunity to testify, and I will go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. With that, I believe we can get started. Mr. Reed, you are still under oath, so you may begin your presentation whenever you are ready. Oh. Mr. Reed, we can't hear you.
That on this, there we go. Is that better?
I can hear you.
So the city received a submittal for a variance on May 10th, 2023. The purpose is to seek a variance from the design setbacks found in Ocean Shores Municipal Code 17-16060 A through E. Specifically, the front yard setback of 20 feet. The previously existing non-conforming structure was built with a 12-foot distance between the property line and the opening of the garage, whereas by city code requires that be a 20-foot setback. No less than 25 feet. It's 20 feet from the front, 25 feet from the back. The project is located in Division 21, Block 5, lots 64 through 66. The address again is 769 Wakena Loop Southeast in Ocean Shores, Washington. This lot has been increased in size through boundary line revision and has 3 lots that have been joined together for a total of 25,160 square feet. The zoning in this area is R1 single family. The land use of this area is single family. The surrounding condition zoning is exclusively R1 to the north, south, east, and west. The land use designation is single family all the way around, north, south, east, and west. The existing land use to the north is a single family residence developed. To the south is vacant undeveloped land. To the east is the single family residence. And to the west is vacant undeveloped land. The property is located in the southeast quadrant of Ocean Shores in a multiple use division surrounded by single family occupancy uses, developed and undeveloped lots. Notice for the public hearing for today's date, June 29th at 10 o'clock were sent to owners within 300 feet of the subject property on June 15th as required by Ocean Shores Municipal Code. We also provided notice on the city's website, and we published this in the Daily World newspaper on June 20th in the 22nd editions. Staff analysis of this proposal, the dimensional requirements of 17-16060D require that the front yard structural setback where there exists a vehicle entrance be 20 feet from the front property line. The current owners purchased this property in its current configuration, wherein the existing garage does not meet the code required 20-foot setback. This development was permitted and approved by the city of Ocean Shores, and as such, the owners had no indication that there existed a non-conformity. The owners proceeded to purchase and combine additional property on the flanking cul-de-sac with the intention of adding onto the existing garage. It wasn't until the planning department was performing a site review for the garage addition that the non-conforming condition was identified. To keep the roof line of the existing home and garage in line with the addition, the owner is seeking relief from the strict application of the flanking street vehicular entrance requirement of 20 feet. The standard of review, the hearing examiner will have the authority to grant a variance from the provisions of this title subject to the following provisions. Any variance granted shall be subject to the conditions that will assure the variance does not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitation on other properties in the vicinity and zone in which the subject property is located. Criteria for conditioning for consideration of a variance. Before the variance may be granted, the hearing examiner shall determine that because special circumstances applicable to the subject property, including size, shape, and topography, location, or surroundings, the strict application of this title is found to deprive the subject property of rights and privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity and under identical zone classifications. And also that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity and zone in which the subject property is situated. Our analysis of this proposal, the applicant for the variance currently owns all 3 parcels that were combined to form the one parcel under boundary line revision 22-027 and is the subject of the variance. If the variance were granted, there would be the equivalent of 1 full standard parcel buffering other parcels from the area where relief from the 20-foot setback is being requested. The total relief requested is 6 feet, reducing the vehicular access setback from 20 feet to 12 feet at its narrowest point. The site visit and measurements taken from the edge of the pavement to the base of the existing garage measured 25 feet, of which a portion is privately owned and a portion is publicly owned right of way. It appears that there is sufficient room to park a standard length vehicle in front of the garage without extending onto the paved street. In addition, there are no short or long-term plans to expand the radius of the cul-de-sac. Should the hearing examiner approve this variance, the planning department recommends conditions as listed in addition to any conditions imposed by the hearing examiner. Provide a minimum of 1 compliant off-street parking space on the south or left-hand side of the proposed garage, and the applicant shall be responsible for all expenses incurred to move or adjust the location of utilities that may conflict with the proposal. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. And it's still a little bit hard to pick you up. So I'm gonna, I guess, to clarify my understanding about the history of the site, I'm just gonna ask some questions so that our members attending, remotely can understand the history of the site, and maybe those watching this this recording later. So my understanding is that there's an existing single-family residence that takes access from Alpine Court Southeast.
Yes, that is correct.
And that is legally non-conforming with the 20-foot setback requirement. Is that correct?
That also is correct.
And then at some point, the property owner later purchased, I guess, the 2 adjacent lots basically to the south. And there was a lot consolidation that was approved by the city at some point.
Yes, that also is correct.
Great. And then I can ask the applicants about this later, but I assume that that lot combination that was sought for the purpose of either expanding this structure or redeveloping the property with a larger residential structure. And I see them nodding. I'll get clarification from them later. This is more just background from my understanding. So the proposed addition here, as you mentioned, would match the roof line of the existing structure. So I guess my understanding is that this project would essentially continue this existing nonconformity, but it's not going to extend any further closer.
Yes, that is correct.
Great, thank you. And then, and you mentioned it in your analysis in your presentation, but it may have been hard for some people to hear. So my understanding is that although this existing structure and the proposed addition would be located only 12 feet from the edge of the right-of-way, a portion of this right-of-way is not improved. And so from a visual and functional perspective, it would actually be located 25 feet from the improved right-of-way.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then I believe, I can look here, I think there were only 2 other lots in this cul-de-sac. Let me get my. I'm looking at the zoning map that you provided, and it looks like following this lot combination, there's a total of 3 lots that potentially would take access from Alpine Court.
Yes, the applicant's lot, one more lot to the south, and then the corner lot that also flanks Waukegan.
And those 2 other lots are not, they're not improved at this time. They're undeveloped.
At this point, the one lot adjacent is undeveloped, and what did I have? Let me check here. South. Yeah, I just extend my analysis one lot in any direction, so I'm not showing that that particular lot is developed or undeveloped.
Okay, I'm just trying to get I guess a visual here for this area, and I can ask the applicants about that when I turn to them. I guess, and I'm asking this because I'm thinking about, you know, it seems like the potential impacts from granting this variance would be very minimal, given that there's only these 2 other lots. And I believe you indicated in your report that there's no plans to extend this cul-de-sac, to use the remaining city's right-of-way. Is that correct, Mr. Reed?
Yeah, that is correct. The utilities that would be installed there have already been installed: water, sewer, power, such.
Great, thank you. I think I understand that. Oh, and then just because I always ask, has the comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance been amended since this application was deemed complete in a manner that would impact this proposal? I can't hear you at all, Mr. Reed. You might want to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see it's not picked. There we go. No, neither plan has been modified.
Great, thank you. I don't have any additional questions for you. I believe I understand this proposal. I see the applicants are here. Would you like to provide testimony today?
Yes.
Great. If you're both speaking, let's get you both sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony that you give here today?
Yes.
And can you state and spell your names for the record?
Sure. My name's Richard Zimmerman, RICHARD ZIMMERMAN.
And I'm Mardo Zimmerman, MARDEAUX, last name Zimmerman, ZIMMERMAN.
Great, thank you. And so now is your opportunity to provide any additional information on this proposal for me and members of the public attending today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity we have to present this. The intent is to, as was stated, extend the garage to be able to house a couple more cars, as well as my dad will be, who's in the audience there, who will be occupying that area. When we started this process, we had no idea that we were too close to the street. But as the extension goes on, it actually goes further away from the street, so it's further away from the right of way. And we've also already have paid PUD to relocate the transformer that was originally located in the area that we were going to be extending. So that's already been taken care of. We also have in the audience Ken Lawson, who is the contractor, as well as my father, Jack Zimmerman, and my son, Keaton Zimmerman. They have been on site the whole time, so they might be able to add something as well.
Great, thank you. So the proposed addition, just just so I understand everything, that would include a garage and some additional living space?
Yes.
Yes, downstairs.
Great, thank you. I don't have any additional questions for you. If you have other members of the applicant team that would like to testify, now would be their opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have maybe one comment.
Okay, can we get you sworn in? I can't see you either. I don't know if there's a presentation area in the room, Mr. Reed. Right there.
Speak to the owl.
Great, thank you. Can you please raise your right hand? We'll get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes.
And can you state and spell your name for the record? Oh, we're not picking you up.
It's KenLawson.
Mr. Lawson, great, thank you. You may proceed. We-
You gotta wait until the yellow square goes around our thing, and then that tells us that it's picking us up. So there, now you can go, keep going.
All right, so when I first looked at the project, I made the assumption that that was a side setback, similar to like if you would put a driveway coming into a house off of the, like an easement, road easement, utility easement, that kind of thing, which is done quite often. So that was my first assumption on it. So I didn't think there was any problem there. And I think it's kind of established well that nobody saw a problem coming. But then obviously, the way things are worded, it is true. So that's I assume the original project was okayed on the basis that that was a side setback instead of the front setback.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lawson. Yeah, and it's an oddly shaped lot. It's a corner lot, and the code provisions are confusing when it comes to these oddly shaped lots. So I certainly understand that. Are there any other comments on this proposal that you would like to provide today?
No, I think they've been covered well.
Great, and I don't have any questions for you. I think I thoroughly understand this proposal. Great. So are there any other members of the applicant team or your relatives that would like to provide testimony today, or should I turn to members of the public? Great. Mr. Reed, are there any members of the public in the room that would like to testify on the second matter?
No, there are not.
Great. So we'll turn to our Zoom attendees. I assume Ms. Jameson is still here for the third matter, but if you want to provide comments, you are welcome to.
That's correct. I will pass. Thank you.
Great. And I see Mr. Baker.
Although I'm directly across the street from the applicants, I have no issues with what they're trying to do, so I have no comment.
Would you like to put that on the record?
Sure.
Okay, let's just swear you in real quick then.
Well, let me.
Great. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you just gave and may provide is the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. So you have no opposition to this proposal? Do you have any other
No.
comments?
No, I do not. It won't impact the neighborhood at all.
Great. Thank you for being here, Mr. Baker. And then I have an Amy's iPhone.
Oh, that is my prevent technician from the office. She's just sitting in on the hearing with us today. I don't believe she wishes to comment.
And then the last person, I have a Casey McGurl. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. I assume they're here for the last matter, but if you'd like to provide any comments on this one.
Thanks for including. I'll pass. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I don't see anyone else on Zoom, so Mr. Reed, do you have any last thoughts on this matter before we adjourn this one? I I can't hear you, Mr. Reed. Maybe do the mute and unmute again. That seemed to work a couple times.
Okay, yeah, we're not having any other comments here. We're good. Thank you.
Okay, great, and we'll get through this. Okay, well, thank you. Well, if you're here for the second matter, you're welcome to stay, but you need not. And I want to thank everyone for participating. And I intend to issue a decision on this request within 10 business days. Thank you.
If you'd like to kick us off.
Yeah, great. Thank you. The final matter we have on the agenda today is number CUP 23003, a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a 3-unit common wall residential structure on an approximately 0.25 acre lot located at 952 Ocean Shores Boulevard Southwest that would be subdivided to allow for individual unit ownership. I received and reviewed several exhibits for this matter in advance of the hearing, which include the application and project plans, the staff report prepared by city staff, and various notice materials. And I will go ahead and admit these exhibits into the record. Should anyone have any additional exhibits that they would like admitted into the record, please let me know when it is your opportunity to testify, and I will go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. With that, I believe we can get started on the final matter. Mr. Reed, you are still under oath, so you may begin your presentation whenever you are ready.
Okay, great. Looks like the owl is being kind to me again. All right, so we received application on April 13th, 2023 for a conditional use permit, CUP 23-003. The purpose is for a conditional use permit of a multifamily medium density zone property where a 3-unit common wall residential structure would be built and then subdividing for allowing individual ownership. The applicant is McGurl Designs and Architecture in Portland, Oregon, along with Obi Lupu and Henri Garda. I hope I didn't wipe your name out there too bad. Sorry if I did. The project description is in Division 16, Block 4, Lot 8 of Ocean Shores, Washington, located at 952 Ocean Shores Boulevard Southwest. The existing zoning of this parcel is R7. The land use designation is multifamily high density. The surrounding conditions of zoning, to the north, we have R7. To the south, we have R9 ultra high density. To the east, we have another R7 multifamily medium density. And to the west, we have R1 single family. The land use designation for these surrounding parcels to the north is high density. To the south is high density. To the east is high density. And I believe to the west is single family. The existing land use surrounding this parcel, to the north, we have a multifamily development, and the lots to the east, south, and west are all vacant, undeveloped properties. Background on this, the property is in the southwest quadrant of Ocean Shores in a multiple use division surrounded by a mixture of residential single-family occupancy uses and undeveloped lots. There are several other single-family, multifamily residential structures in the immediate area on Ocean Spray, Moose Court, Ocean Shores Boulevard, and Marine View Drive. In the R7 zone, it is designated a conditional use for the development of a common wall residential structure where the underlying land and common wall structure is subdivided to allow individual ownership of the subdivided lot. This is pursuant to Ocean Shores Municipal Code Title 1728.030C. Notices to the public were sent out for this application, scheduled for today, June 29th at 10 o'clock to the 300-foot radius of subject properties on June 15th, 2023, as required by Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1752.090. And attached is a copy of the 300-foot radius map along with zoning. Notice of the public hearing was also provided to the Daily World newspaper for publication in the June 20th and June 22nd editions. Staff has determined that this project is listed as a conditional use for the zoning district, and conditional uses, row house and other common wall residential developments where the underlying land is subdivided to allow ownership of the individual lot and home. The subject property is in an R7 zone. Multifamily dwellings are permitted in this zone with a maximum density of 1 unit for every 1,800 square feet of lot size. 1728-050 density regulations. And this is what dictates that in paragraph B. 2-family and multifamily dwellings shall have a minimum lot size of 1,800 square feet per dwelling unit. As such, this property contains 10,800 square feet and 6 dwellings would be allowed as a permitted use. Without question, the proposed building can be approved as a permitted use. And the subject of this application is whether the land can be subdivided, so the individual lots and homes may be individually owned as opposed to being rented by tenants. The standard of review, 1752-050, before any conditional use permit is granted, the hearing examiner must determine the following. The use applied for is either listed in the conditional uses allowed in the district, or that it is significantly similar to one of the uses allowed in the district. And that approval of the permit would be substantially consistent with the purpose of the district and the applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan and will not adversely affect other uses of properties in the immediate vicinity. Granting the permit would not reduce the dimensional requirements of the district, and also that no nuisance to life, limb, or property would develop. Staff analysis, the use applied for is specifically a conditional use allowed in the district. The following uses, as defined in R7, would be under C, row house and other common wall residential developments where the underlying land is subdivided to allow ownership of the individual lot and home. And so that this proposal would fit into that. The district is intended for moderate single-family and multifamily dwellings in order to assure light, air, open space, privacy, and the protection of property values while providing an affordable housing in the community. Where the proposed use would allow for individual units to be sold to home buyers, the application appears consistent with the purpose of the district. The city's adopted 2020 comprehensive plan supports the proposal in the following policy statement. Housing policy number 8 is to encourage and promote a wide range of residential development types and densities in various parts of the city to meet the needs of a diverse population and provide for a variety of housing choices. Again, because the proposal would use, because the proposed use would allow for units to be sold to individual home buyers, the application appears to be consistent with the purpose of the comprehensive plan. The proposed site plan conforms to all city standards. Approving the application would not reduce the dimensional requirements of the district, and there's no indication that allowing the units to be individually owned would create any nuisance to life, limb, or property as compared to if they were rented to tenants. Should the hearing examiner approve this development, the planning department recommends conditions as listed in addition to any conditions imposed by the hearing examiner. Number 1, the construction must meet all current planning, zoning, building, construction, and fire code requirements, as well as the Ocean Shores Municipal Code. That adequate parking should be provided per Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1754-100, and an approved storm drain design should be provided prior to any permits being issued. Landscaping as required by Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1750-100, and also condition number 5, each newly created parcel through subdivision will be required to establish individual municipal utilities, which would cover sewer, water, storm drain, and ambulance. The subject parcel that is subdivided shall be given credit for 1 sewer utility assessment. Each new parcel created pursuant to the approval of this request shall be required to comply with the Ocean Shores utility charge in lieu of assessment outlined in 1328-025 as well as all system development charges for each parcel based on the requirements of 1326-065. Similar conditions will apply to establish water services required to complete the project, and this can be found in 1312-080 and 1312-085. Also, storm drain utility fees, 1320-050, and ambulance utility fees, Ocean Shores Municipal Code, Title 2.33.090C3. And then that will conclude the staff report for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. So my understanding is that, but for the request to subdivide the property to allow for these units to be individually owned, this proposed threeplex structure would be permitted outright on this property. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then, so if I ultimately approve this CUP, would the applicant be required to apply for a short plat that would be reviewed administratively by the city?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. And then sometimes the one issue that arises with these multi-unit structures is emergency fire access, but it appears that this would be on a corner lot. So from what I can tell, there would be no issue accessing the rear of that property in an emergency situation. Does that sound accurate? Great. And these look like fairly standard conditions. Again, because I always ask, has the comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance been amended since this application was deemed complete in a manner that would affect the proposal?
No, neither the plan nor the codes have been revised.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions I have for you, Mr. Reed. It looks like we have the applicant here, Casey McGurl, and you can correct me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Yeah, no, you got it. That's pretty close. McGurl, I guess the U is
Girl.
silent.
Thank you. Would you like to provide some testimony at this hearing on the proposal?
No, I believe Marshall has nailed everything on the head. It sounded great.
Great, thank you for being here. I don't have any questions, but let's turn to the room if there's any members of the public there, Mr. Reed, that want to provide comment.
No, it's just me and my planner.
Great, then we have Miss Jameson.
Nope, I don't have anything to comment, just taking notes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Baker, any comments on this last proposal?
No, sir.
Great, well, I believe that should do it. Mr. Reed, unless you have any last thoughts on this seems fairly straightforward to me.
Yeah, no, this is consistent with most of the CUPs for Commonwealth subdivisions that we've done in the past. Nothing unusual about this one.
Great, thank you. And I don't say this often, but I've reviewed all the materials and I don't see any issue with approving this request with the city's recommended conditions. And my intention is to issue a decision within 10 business days of the record closing, approving this with the city's recommended conditions. So I want to thank everyone for participating. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this last matter and adjourn the hearing today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.